Hi, I'm April. I am a singer-songwriter and music teacher, and today we're going to be talking about how to write a song for beginners. In this video, we're going to be going through what I think are the four most important aspects of writing a song, which are lyrics, harmony, melody, and structure. If you're confused about what any of those words mean, you can watch this video right here, and it'll give you a couple of vocab words, those included. You can start with any of these sections first and go in any order that feels comfortable for you. I kind of tend to go with all of them at once and sort of do like a big mishmash of all of them. But I think any order is totally valid. But since you're just beginning, I think a really good place to start is structure. There are a million different ways to structure a song, but there are two in particular that are actually way more common than any other type. One of them is verse-chorus structure, also known as pop song structure. There's also a type of song called a verse-refrain. If you want to write a song that has a big, catchy chorus and feels really sing-alongable, you should go with verse-chorus. It's the most common form, and it's also what you'll hear on the radio like all the time. If you want to write a really introspective, lyric-driven, story-driven song that like Bob Dylan would want to write, that's going to be where you're going to go for a verse-refrain. Really just determine whether you want your listener to be focusing in on the lyrics, the story, or on the melody or the tune or the catchiness of it. The main difference between these two structures is that in a verse-refrain, you have one single refrain line that goes at the end of each verse that's going to explain what your main idea is. So that's only one line. As opposed to your chorus, which is 4 or sometimes even 8 lines if it's really long, that spends a little bit more time fleshing out that main idea. Once you've come up with your song structure, you can move on to harmony, or the chord progression. When you're just starting out, it's really good to pick a chord progression that fits into a specific key. I like to think of musical keys as being like colors on a palette when you're painting. For instance, if I were to paint a big picture of the sun, I'd probably be using a lot of oranges, yellows, reds, but you wouldn't really see any greens. If you're very adept, you might be able to use a color like blue or purple and eventually kind of figure out how to incorporate it in a way that still looks like the sun. But it's something that you have to focus on really hard because sometimes it might just clash and make the whole thing look a little weird. Keys work the same way. It's just a collection of notes that all kind of go together. So when you're creating a chord progression, try to focus on chords that all go together. So for instance, the key of C, I think, is the easiest key to start with because on the piano, it doesn't use any black notes. The chords in the key of C are C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B diminished, though you're probably not going to want to use that one just yet, and back to C. The easiest way to think about those chords on the piano is by shape. So really you're just taking your thumb, your middle finger, and your pinky, and then you're just spacing them one white key apart from each other. And that's a really simple way to get started with creating chords. Now all you have to do is mix and match them. So if I wanted to start on my C and move to G, E minor, F, that might be a really cool progression to start with. So try starting on C major and then just rotate between 3 or 4 chords that you really like together. You can decide for yourself whether you want to repeat these through each of the sections or if you want to change it when you get from one section to the next, but it's your song, so it's all up to you. Now we can move on to melody. When I write a melody, I tend to start by just looping my chord progression over and over and over and over, and then just coming up with whatever comes to me. But that might feel really daunting or scary for you, so you don't have to start there. Instead, what you can maybe do is start by starting on your first chord. So for me, this was a C major, and then try each note as a starting note. So you could start with and now I've got a really good starting point because I can just elaborate on those melodies and create something really nice around it. Now for the big guy, we're talking lyrics. A lot of musicians I know really struggle with lyrics, and I think it's because it's so disconnected in people's mind from the concept of music. But actually, I think it's pretty easy once you get the hang of it, because the lyrics are so dependent on what the music is doing, and the music is so dependent on what the lyrics are doing. So once you have a few basic tricks, you can kind of go off and do your own thing with lyrics and find something really cool. If lyric writing feels really elusive and scary to you, all you need to do is think about two simple things, which are story and moral. You can also think of these as just show and tell. In your verses, use really specific, sense-driven imagery to tell a story, one with a setting, a plot, characters. And when I say sense-driven, I mean use your senses. Instead of just saying, we met at a bookstore, talk about the smell of those old books, talk about her eyes scanning the page rapidly, or you could even talk about the colors of the different spines of the books behind her. As you write your song, your verses are going to have the same melody and harmony throughout, but your words are going to change, so try to get them to be a little more intense each time. In your chorus or refrain line, I want you to give me the main idea. Whatever the point of the song is, the reason you started writing the song, whatever that moral or unifying theme is, this is where you just lay it out on the table. You just tell us. Since this section repeats a bunch of times throughout your song, once you've written this one section, you've written half of your song. So give yourself a pat on the back. As for the more technical stuff, you can start by making each section 4 lines long, and then use a simple rhyme scheme like A, B, A, B. I have a cat who likes to eat noodles. She's friends with a bat who likes apple strudels. A, B, A, B. Or you can use A, A, B, B. I have a cat who's friends with a bat. They like to eat noodles and apple strudels. A, A, B, B. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was a lot of information, so be sure to take it little by little, implement each thing one by one, and you're going to be a songwriting pro in no time. And if you want to see more songwriting content like this, be sure to subscribe to my channel and ring that little bell if you want to be notified the next time I post.